Welcome to the TwinSpires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Vance Hansen to discuss Rhyme Scheme's runaway victory in the Saratoga Special, plus the Arlington Million, the Fourstardave, and other performances that caught our eye over the weekend. It's good to have you back, James and Vance. And let's begin with Saturday's Saratoga Special, where we saw Rhyme Schemes dominate by more than 9 lengths for trainer Norm Cassie. Do you think this 2-year-old has a chance to become a major Kentucky Derby contender? Let's start with James.
I don't think so, Ashley. I think he's going to be more of a shorter distance type than a classic distance next spring. I will say, though, I was blown away by his performance. Wow, he's won 2 races in a row now. Rhyme Schemes has by 9+ lengths. And, got to give I want to give Deuce Greathouse, who picked him out for $210,000. He was some prize prospect at the yearly sales. That guy has a heck of an eye for horses, and I was impressed by the performance. I won't be surprised to see Rhyme Schemes carry his form a 1.16 miles this fall. I think he's a threat to overpower 2-year-olds. We'll see what comes from California or what's in California when the Breeders' Cup's there. But I Distorted Humor, he's an extremely, Ghost Sapper, he's an extremely versatile sire. Ghost Sapper, he's thrown champions in turf routers, long distance dirt champions, but he also throws a lot of sprinters. He's the sire of Goodnight Olive, the current female sprint champion. Judy the Beauty was a well-known sprinter, and I was looking at his pedigree stats. He's got 6 or 7 grade 1 winning sprinters. So I'm a little bit concerned. The pedigree certainly fits on the dam side. You look at the sires there, Distorted Humor, Bernardini, Unbridled, Mr. Prospector. But I'm a little bit I'm a little inclined when I see these real fast 2-year-olds like Rhyme Schemes to think Triple Crown type races for it. But he could prove me wrong. What do you think, Vance?
Well, the history of the Saratoga Special is kind of working against Rhyme Schemes of winning the Kentucky Derby. There's actually only been 2 special winners to go on to win the Derby since the end of World War II, and that was Bold Forbes in the mid-'70s, and then Swale 40 years ago was the last special winner to win the Kentucky Derby. Now, we've had a couple of classic winners in the last decade or so. Union Rags won the special, went on to win the Belmont. Exaggerator won the special, went on to win the Preakness after running second in the Derby. So, I'm not quite as negative about Rhyme Schemes at this point as perhaps James is, but still, it's a tall task. The race itself does attract more sprinting types, more one-turn types these days. Trainer Norm Cassie is quietly confident this horse is going to get a distance of ground. Well, that remains to be seen. We'll see if he shows up in a race like the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland. We're going to know a lot more about him after a race like that and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So I think there's I'm not going to say he has no chance in the Derby yet because it's just far too early to either like or dislike him for the Derby so far. What do you think, Ashley?
Yeah, James mentioned the pedigree, and that has me a little hesitant to say this horse is going to go on to even become a contender in the Kentucky Derby. And as you mentioned, Vance, with the history of the Saratoga Special, I believe it's just 4 horses total that have gone on to win the Kentucky Derby. Also Regret in 1914 and Whirlaway in 1940. So certainly not a lot of history on the side of Rhyme Schemes, but we'll also, there's a lot still to be determined the rest of the season to see how he can stretch out and race farther. So let's move on to older males. We saw a 7-year-old gelding and set piece win the Arlington Million this weekend, and a 7-year-old Casa Creed claim the 4-Stardave. What are your thoughts on the turf division after these races, Vance?
Well, given the absence of the division leader up to the mark, the Arlington Million came up a lot more competitive. Set piece, no surprise that he won. But, like you mentioned, he's 7 years old. He is kind of a known commodity, and he's going to have to step up and face a lot better horses down the road if he's going to contend for an Eclipse Award title. And, being 7, I just don't see that happening. Casa Creed once again confirmed that he loves Saratoga, winning the Fourstardave again. And But he's another one. He's kind of a known commodity. He doesn't always transfer that Saratoga form to other tracks. He's already lost and finished unplaced in three previous Breeders' Cup attempts. So, looking back at the Arlington Million and the Fourstardave this past weekend, I don't think there were any great revelations that came out of the race. And I still think that this turf male title division still goes through Up to the Mark, who I think will be back in action later this month, and perhaps the Sword Dancer. How about you, James?
Yeah, I agree with Casa Creed, and as well. I read the quotes after the Fourstardave. I'll give him a lot of credit. I thought that was a heck of an effort. Annapolis got the jump on him at the top of the stretch. Casa Creed had perhaps not run his best races on less than firm ground, and the turf was good on Saturday. And he really, once he got into stride, like in mid-stretch, he just closed, I thought, terrifically to run down Annapolis. But Vance referenced the fact he really likes the turf at Saratoga. He's really good at Belmont as well there. And Bill Mott said after the race, he didn't sound too keen, Vance and Ashley, on sending Casa Creed to the Breeders' Cup. He talked about what a hard season. He went overseas to Saudi Arabia and competed earlier this year. And he sounded like he may just give him time off and bring him back next year as a 7-year-old next year, or eight-year-old next year. And even the owner said that. He wasn't, Vance referenced it. He has not run well at Santa Anita and other venues in the Breeders' Cup. Last time it was at Santa Anita, the turf sprint was 6.5 furlongs, and he actually ran Casa Creed in that race. They're going to go back to 5 furlongs this year, so only the mile would be under consideration. But I wouldn't be surprised if he skipped it. Set piece, I was a little surprised to see. I mean, I'll give set piece credit. That's his first win at 1.25 miles. Been more of a 1.16 miles, 1.125 horse. He just doesn't have a really Breeders' Cup division that fits him well. I think the mile might be a little too sharp for him, and the 1.5 miles, looks too far, but he hasn't tried it yet. I would think that Brad Cox will try him in 1.5 miles. We'll know more after that next start. And if he runs well there, maybe go to the Breeders' Cup. If there was a horse to take away from those Colonial races, though, for the rest of the year, I think it would be Feb Rover. Now, she's got to keep advancing for Mark Casse, but that was a really nice win. And that filly seemingly still has upside in the filly and mare turf division. Ashley.
I agree with Vance, Up to the Mark, I think, is leader of this division between Casa Creed and, looking at set piece. I do think Casa Creed has the better resume at the time, but set piece now has a third in the opening verse stakes. He has a win in the Arlington, a third in the Wisden, and now the win in the Arlington Million. But also taking it back to some history as far as 7-year-olds winning the turf division, I believe there's only 3, most recently Flintshire and Big Blue Kitten in 2016 and 2015, both Chad Brown runners. And the only other 7-year-old was back in 2006. So I don't think we're going to see Casa Creed or set piece end up winning this division. I do think it is Up to the Mark who has the best chance at the moment. Well, is there anything else that caught your eye this weekend as far as big performances, James?
I've been mentioning some Saratoga 2-year-old maiden winners. Obviously, Saturday, a lot of attention on rhyme schemes in the Saratoga Special. But earlier in the program, race number 5, Deterministic, a 2-year-old colt by Liam's Map. I thought really ran a nice race to get up and win, beat a nice horse, Hurricane Nelson, that ran a huge race at first asking for Gustavo Delgado. And Deterministic was a high price, $625,000 yearling purchase or 2-year-old in training purchase by Liam's Map, who has been a solid sire, but is looking for still a breakthrough performer. And Deterministic, really, I thought that was an encouraging first effort for Christophe Command, and he'll be a 2-year-old to follow off of that race. Vance, what are you going to talk about?
The horse that kind of caught my eye on Sunday was Inspiral, the 4-year-old filly who won the Prix-Jacques Les Marois at Deauville for the 2nd year in a row. Now, she had just run 11 days before that in the Sussex Stakes at Goodwood, and it was really heavy, bottomless ground. She struggled over it. Trainer John Gosden and his son Thady drew a line through that, wheeled her back on short rest, and proved much the best in the Jacques Les Marois for this, like I said, for the 2nd year in a row. Now, that was a Breeders' Cup Challenge prep win, and you're in for the mile. And, given the filly prefers ground that's more firm and faster than soft, I think Gosden will be taking a long look at the Breeders' Cup Mile at Santa Anita. I think that's going to be her type of track she can be competitive at, and it's going to be probably a better race for her than the Queen Elizabeth II at Ascot a few weeks before, because that race often tends to be run over soft to heavy ground. So Inspiral off of that win at Deauville on Sunday is definitely a horse to watch for the Breeders' Cup Mile in November at Santa Anita. What'd you see this weekend, Ashley?
I wanted to compliment your pronunciation of French stakes races. I would have butchered that.
I took 6 years of French in school, so I know a little bit.
I know Spanish, no French whatsoever. But for me, I wanted to point out two-year-old performances this weekend, starting with Prince of Monaco. He won the Best Pal Stakes at Del Mar by 4 1/4 lengths and recorded a 102 brisnet speed rating, the highest of any 2-year-old this season. Last weekend, we had the filly Brightwork record a 101 when winning the Adirondack, and then we had Prince of Monaco come out and record 1 point better. He also had the fastest time for the distance at the current Del Mar meet. He beat a stablemate Muth, the 1-2 favorite in the race, and they're both probably pointed toward the Del Mar Futurity on September 10th. And then as far as a 2-year-old filly, also out of a Medaglia d'Oro mare, it was Hot Beach for freshman sire Omaha Beach that won the Ellis Park Debutante Stakes on August 13th, beat 8 rivals and earned Omaha Beach his first stakes winner and his 7th individual winner. So Omaha Beach is up there in the rankings right now for first crop sires, and certainly an exciting freshman sire to be following this season. So anything else you all wanted to talk about?
No, I think Omaha Beach would be the betting favorite if they had a betting on. Now, Flame Away did have a couple of nice winners this weekend, so I'll give him a little plug. He's a freshman sire, but those Omaha Beaches are definitely worth following.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have for this week's Racing Roundtable. You can catch us next Tuesday as we recap the Alabama and the Lake Placid and more. And be sure to check out our best bets and fades of the weekend on the jury this Thursday as well. We'll see you next time.